health problem, something you could go to those areas. But there was nobody at any of those, any exit or entrance points. They were kind of wandering around. In the beginning of it, we were getting some last minute instructions from the Trump campaign lawyers on what we were supposed to be doing with the ballot counting, the ballot observations. And we had to move close to try and get them. It's a noisy area. So we were moving close. Well, then someone from a Biden observer would come and scream at us that we had to move back. So it was this game of moving forward and back for several minutes of trying to lean in to try and get the instructions, get screamed at, and then we would have to back up. At one point, a woman started screaming and very loudly at some people right next to me, and there was no police there, and so some Trump attorneys had to form like a wall to kind of keep her away from us in order for us to move away and continue the job. If normally I would expect that type of behavior to be taken care of by law enforcement of some kind. It was a very disturbing experience. I have absolutely no confidence in the integrity of this recount. I can't even believe it happened. I can't believe that anyone could say in the United States of America that type of thing was allowed. I was sick for 2 days afterwards with a headache. I don't have headaches. I don't see how we can have a democratic republic if this type of nonsense is allowed to occur. I was personally insulted by the comments in the media that said this was a smooth and fair procedure. I don't know, they were not in there. They were not in there. Or they're completely lying. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Dr. Kramer, for your testimony today. We've all been going for a while, so I think we're a little bit tired. We're going to go to Artis Cerny next.
It's a little wet. Do you have something dry?
Oh.
Could you lift off the chair a little? With your hanky? It's wet. It's not so bad.
Let's, why don't we do that while they're ready.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Artis Cerny. I'm from Pewaukee, Wisconsin. Ooh, this is all wet. Before I forget, I just want to say, if you folks take the time to go to WEC's front page, on the left-hand column, there's a spot that says complaint. So that's where you put your complaints that Dean Knudsen was talking about. It gives you a little tiny square, and you might have a 3-page story that you want to tell to them. You can't look back to see what you already wrote. It's like impossible. The last time I did a complaint, I freehand wrote it and sent it to Reed, and I said, here's my complaint. I find your complaint note on your website ridiculous. So just take a look at that, please. Okay. On Election Day, I observed at 4 polling locations in Milwaukee County. The first one was in Wauwatosa. The other 3 were in Milwaukee. When we asked the chiefs what they did with mail-in ballots that were brought into their polling place, the other 3 were in Milwaukee, they each had a different answer. So remember, this is Election Day, and we asked, what if somebody walks in with a mail-in ballot? What do you do? The first chief took them to the central count, which happened to be in the same building that he was in. At the second location, the next one spoiled the citizens' ballot and gave them a new ballot. At the third location, The chief refused to touch them, make them take him back to his car, and then when the person came back in, he gave him a ballot. The fourth person said he had not faced that problem yet and he'd deal with it when he got to it. So the third person was correct. He made the citizen actually take it back to his car, and when he came back in, he gave him a ballot. But it is clear, and I've been dealing with WEC a few years, WEC is responsible for creating this mail-in ballot fiasco and expecting clerks, chiefs, and poll workers to remember all of the directives, because there are so many, it's impossible. If you ever want to get a headache, go to WEC's website, go to clerk communications, and listen to some of the communications for creating this mail-in ballot fiasco and expecting clerks, chiefs, and poll workers to remember all of the directives, because there are so many, it's impossible. If you ever want to get a headache, go to WEC's website, go to clerk communications, and listen to some of the communications that WEC gives to their people. You can't understand it. It's literally impossible. Every time you folks did a law, WEC took that law and twisted it around until it met what they wanted to achieve. It was pretty unbelievable what they did with some of the statutes that you passed. Now, then I went out to Central Count that same day on Election Day. It was a farce. You could see nothing. It literally was a farce. I felt sorry for the man before me. I think he had these high expectations, but I know what kind of things go on in Milwaukee. I'm not going to re-explain to what he talked about, how this was a huge room, like a football field room. And they had pods. They had tables set up in cubicle areas. So around the aisles, you could sort of see something at a table, but you could not see any of the interior tables. There were some chairs at some of the interior tables. There was a Democrat woman that sat there the whole day, and how did I know she was a Democrat? Because she never watched the proceedings. She looked at her phone all day. The only time they brought their head up is when they thought you were trying to stop a vote from being counted. Then we got their attention. I finally went and stood next to this woman, even though she was sitting in the chair, because I wanted to see what was going on in the interior. And it didn't take long for one of the directors down there to come and tell me, you cannot stand here. And I said, but I want to stand here. I want to view what's going on here. If you keep up with this, you're going to get kicked out of here. You're out of here. So I thought, okay, I won't get kicked out. So I moved on and went someplace else. But that was the kind of atmosphere that we were dealing with down there. And one thing I want to bring up before I forget, that night I went home and I watched the news, and in Madison, the observers there were allowed to be right up to the table. In fact, I saw them putting ballots and envelopes up against the scratched up plexiglass that I was forced to try and look through. So how come Madison got treated that way and we got treated differently? So here again, we do not have fair situations going on in this state. Now, I just also want you to be aware of this fact. Since, and I guess it was Kevin Kennedy in 2016, gave the clerks the right to write in an address that was missing from the witness address on the envelope. But at that time, they could still use black and blue ink. It wasn't until this year that they were directed to use that red ink. And had they not used red ink, we never would have known that that was a directive that came from WEC. So I think it's important to realize that they knew they were doing something wrong, and they decided they'd put it in red because they didn't want to have to deny that there's something odd there. All I can tell you is it wasn't until this election that they were made to write those addresses in red. So try and figure that one out. Okay, so then we're moving on to my experience at the recount. Once again, it was a farce. 5 feet away from the edge, 3 feet away from the edge of the table, and then there was a scratched up plexiglass. You couldn't really see anything that was going on. I tried positioning my chair to a better position so I could see, and that is when the bullying and the badgering started. My chair was not positioned correctly. My toes were over the yellow line. My knees were over the yellow line. There were about 5 Democrats that started picking on me, and I mean picking on me. I hardly had a chance to even observe. They just kept at it. When I initially got there, I've been going to these things for a long time. So whenever I go, I sign in as an independent because I'm not talking for the Republican Party. And if I get in trouble, I don't want it to reflect on the Republican Party. So I've always signed in as an independent. I was told that there were 3 chairs in front of the tables, and one was for an independent, and one was for a Republican, and one was for a Democrat. Okay, so I sat in the independent chair. And I took the chair, but somehow the 5 goons that were intimidating me, when they found out I was an independent, their heads exploded. Then they really got bad. Why was I talking to the Republican attorney? Why was I doing this? Why was I doing that? I tried to explain to them that as an independent, I had the right to support the candidate of my choice. That didn't mean I was apolitical. The intimidation just got worse, so I decided this is hopeless. So I left. And I thought, okay, maybe if I just go to another part of the room. So I decided to go and watch the Milwaukee Election Commission for a while because they were making they were holding court in the middle of the room. And I thought, well, okay, I'll go up there and just sit and relax and calm down. All of a sudden, I heard my name over the loudspeaker through the whole building. I never did hear what I was being accused of, but I was so incensed. I was shocked. I approached the table. I said, my name is Artis Cerny. You just mentioned my name. What did I do wrong? And I said, I'm abhorred by the fact that you said my name over the loudspeaker without even talking to me first. They totally ignored me. I went and sat down. The chief judge, whatever his name is, he said, well, we've got to put a stop to this. Let's vote on removing the 3rd chair from in front of every table. So, of course, the commission is a 2-1, so the 2 people voted, and then they made a big deal about this workman coming out and getting all the 3rd chairs. Actually, it helped our guys get a little bit closer to where they could see better, so it was okay, actually. I wasn't too upset about it. The next day I did go back, but this time I was over against the far wall watching the big machines count ballots. But one of the goons was about 20 feet away. Artis Cerny, I'm watching you. Okay, here it started all over again. Then I saw one of the other people that were giving me a hard time. What are you doing here? You got kicked out yesterday. I politely said that I did not get kicked out. I left of my own volition. All in all, the recount was a total waste of time, but it needed to be done so that the lawyers could go ahead, could move forward with doing whatever they had to do. Just got a couple of other comments. I have a couple things that I want you to be aware of. Here's another case of WEC breaking the law, okay? Wisconsin State Statute 6.86 sub 6 that says that if you received a ballot by mail and you spoiled it, you spilled coffee on it, something happened to it, the citizen is required to return the spoiled ballot to the clerk's office before they can receive a new one. But if you take a look on WEC's website under spoiled absentee ballot guidance, there is a statement now that says you can spoil your ballot in writing by mail or email to the clerk. When did that happen? Every other situation, you spoil a ballot, you got to either mail it back into the clerk or you got to take it personally before they will give you another one. So how many people called in, never really spoiled the first ballot, got to vote. I mean, they're handing ballots out like they're candy, is what's going on up there. Now, last Friday, let me preface this with this. Okay, when I was observing at the recount, they brought out a wad of ballots. You know when you go to the Office Depot and you get a new ream of paper to put in your printer, and the ballots are perfectly in the plastic container, and you got to fan them a little bit so they loosen up? They brought out a wad of ballots, and I said to myself, those don't look like they've touched human hands. And I looked at them a little more, and I thought, well, they do have the creases in. And then I did ask Claire, I said, did you fold these pre-fold for the? Well, some of them we pre-folded. Okay, so I thought, well, maybe since the creases were all identical, maybe it does look like a pristine, but it just looks so perfect. So I did watch those being counted over at when they went to the big machines to be counted. But that still kind of haunts me, like, why did those ballots look so perfect? So last Friday, I did an open records request of Milwaukee County, who now has custody of the ballots and the envelopes and everything else. I have done this before in other years. I wanted to look at the physical properties of the ballots, the texture of the paper, the creases, the perfect bubbles. I wanted to actually count a couple of wards. I was told I would never be permitted to handle the ballots, ever. Now, I've heard and I've seen on TV that in other states, people are being allowed to look at the ballots and touch them and count them and do whatever. I am hoping that maybe one of you could help me get in to see some of these wards. I've got some numbers. So if anybody's interested in taking that a step further, please help me with that. I still cannot believe that in the interest of fair and honest elections, WEC did not stop the donation of millions of dollars to 5 of our cities. Did you in the legislature know that this was going on? Did you know? This is blatantly apprehensible. They were buying votes. This should have never been allowed. Who should have been the person to stop this? Who should have been the person to stop this? Who do we go to? What do we do? It's pretty unbelievable. Now, how do we correct this mess? I have